All right, welcome back to Evony with Genghis. I have a special interview for you today, an expose sort of on things that have been happening behind the scenes with Evony. And you can see YouTube channel here, Enchanted Evony. And then there is also this Twitch channel, the exact same owner. They upload videos onto both websites, both streaming services. And basically, they're going to give us a little synopsis of what this series is about, this expose series. And then you can head over to their Twitch or YouTube and follow along. So, Briar, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Genghis. It's really nice to talk to you.
Yeah, likewise. So we actually talked for like an hour and a half the other day. And honestly, I could have talked all day. I could go again for another 2 hours, but we'll keep it very short, just little tidbits so people know what to expect and to head over to your videos. And I'd love for people to see all about it. So you're a longtime Evony player, all the way back in the days of Sivony, Age 1, pre-Age 1, same as me. Fast forward to today, and all of a sudden there's what some people would say is strange stuff happening. So the thing that actually kind of started your motivation, if I'm right, is the disappearing SVS points.
Actually, it was kind of interesting because I was playing on an older continent and we were playing in SVS with other teams, and they kept talking about how, they had these cheaters on their server, and they were, these people were using all these, RSS sellers and these third-party programs and all this other stuff to get ahead in the game. And it was very odd. I mean, not that we didn't know that those things happened, but the frequency started getting just more and more. And so it really got me wondering. And I've got this kind of investigative side to me anyway, and got a long coding background. I was streamed for a long time. And so I decided I was going to start kind of looking into these things. And sure enough, the servers that were talking about it, we were, they were sharing their videos, sharing their screenshots and stuff with me. And there were strange things happening with their points. And when you went and you looked at the servers when they weren't in SVS weeks, you were looking at servers that had some kind of suspicious activity going on. I mean, you've seen the spiderweb videos. I mean, I think you've had some of the spiderweb videos, right?
Yeah, of course. You're talking about the massive bot farms. And just for anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about with disappearing SVS points, there's been multiple photographs going around in my Discord group, probably other Discord groups, that basically show a score in SVS, and a player has a big score, and then fast forward like an hour and all their scores are wiped out and all their scores are removed from SVS, but their negatives remain.
Right. But in the beginning, it wasn't to that extent. In the beginning, when we started seeing it, it was just weird tweaks where somebody would go up by a lot in points, but there were no correlating reports. So like you'd have a player that would just suddenly jump from 200 million points to 1.1 billion points with like no negatives, but nobody on their server would be reporting any kind of losses, and there's no negative points showing how those points jumped. And so it got a little weird. And so I started kind of looking around and trying to figure out what was going on. Long story short, that server ended up getting merged. It wasn't a great environment. So I moved to a new server. And when I moved to the new server, I ended up on one of those servers that had those bot farms. I was like, this is kind of crazy. And they would pop up all over the map. So I started trying to figure out what was going on with those. And it ended up with me getting connected with a whole bunch of other people that were looking into the same kind of thing. There were some higher ups in there who had connections to game development and to, the security side of this stuff. And everybody kind of had these ideas about exactly what was going on. And so we all started putting our heads together and trying to figure out what was happening. And then we started talking to some of the players that looked like maybe they were involved in, third-party, applications being what they are and things. You can track people apparently a lot easier. And so some of them were using those to track the people that they thought were using these things. And so in all of this investigation, We found a lot of information, and so now I'm putting it together, and I'm putting it out there for everybody in Evony to see, and that's what these streams are all about.
So I'll just tease it a little bit because, like I said, we talked for a long time. So some people are probably thinking like I would be at this point, like, oh yeah, so the guy has ESB, he has 50 accounts on his computer, one main auto setter, he hits auto send, that's what it is. But what you're going to talk about is that there may be a large network or a small network of people who have a lot of employees who work on different servers and do this all over. Like that this goes way deeper and that they actually do a lot more stuff inside the game controlling things.
That's exactly it. Actually, it was really, as all of this unfolded, here I am kind of expecting we're going to find, oh, there's this one RSS seller that's figured out some new thing, and like he's telling all his buddies, and on other servers they're starting to do the same things. And it turned out to be much more nefarious and much more expansive than I ever kind of imagined that it would be.
So if I open my game right now and I have one of those random messages from someone in a different language who offers to sell me resources, is it likely that this is like a person who's working like kind of like not like a criminal organization, but I guess like an organization that is selling resources, and this is like all funneling back towards one person who's kind of running this whole thing?
Yes, and also no, because that would indicate that there's only one person benefiting from it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think it's actually a group, but yes. So, when you get those messages and you get those mails, inevitably they're coming in and they're like, this level 1 or level 6 monarch, and the language is usually Chinese or simplified Chinese, Vietnamese. Occasionally you'll get, some that are Indo. There are a couple that actually do speak English pretty well, which I always get a kick out of. But you'll have it and it'll say like, contact me on whatever other app they want you to go to contact them. Sometimes it's, Discord or Line or WhatsApp. WhatsApp's really popular now for it too. Okay. Those guys are all very connected.
Okay. And another thing, there's other things like, in the coding of the game, etc., stuff like this, where people can gain advantages, finding things on the map easier, this sort of stuff. And I'm not talking about boss finders that are out there.
Yeah, so that was the kind of pervasive undertone was, everybody kept assuming, and we were all talking about the fact that, bots can do some of this stuff, but they can't do as much of it as what we were seeing. So they were getting results out of bots that just didn't match up. So it didn't make any sense. And then, some of the people that were in this group are developers for other games. And they're like, we've seen this kind of functionality out of this software called Cheat Engine. And, even in Call of Duty, like people use lag switchers and there's speed hacks for all of these other games and all of this stuff. What if they figured out how to do this? And so some very smart people did a lot of very smart things and reverse engineered and looked at things and figured out exactly how they do it. And then actually managed to confirm that in the game with some people that, I'm thinking they're probably employees of this group that didn't realize that, the other people they were talking to weren't employees. But yeah.
Yeah. And, so I know where this goes, so I won't spill the beans here. I'll keep it safe for you. One thing I'd like to ask that may be interesting for some people out there. You talked about how and why you can't make new accounts on old servers anymore. And then I'd also, so if you could fill us in a little bit about that. And also another thing that just because this came up with me today, because I help people with accounts and help them sell them and stuff. And when I go to log into them, there's now problems with switching accounts and switching back. You can only switch one time also. Can you fill us in a little bit about this and how it's connected?
Yeah, so you may have noticed Facebook has cracked down on some functionality with its games and its game connections, right? So when you're using Facebook to try and link a game or trying to unlink from one and link to another one to swap accounts around, you're going to get some glitches and hangups. You're going to get some 2FA things, and there's new codes and things you have to put in place.
Yeah, there's a limited Facebook.
It's a limited Facebook, yeah. And Facebook has now put some things in place to protect their platform, because there was so much of it happening. And I have to assume that it was with Evony because so much of this happened in Evony, but I'm sure it's probably happening in other game platforms as well. That people were really just creating bogus accounts on Facebook to be able to go in and flop their games around, right?
Oh, I had like 50 fake Facebooks, like, and I'm not the only one. Like, Gmail did the same thing. They started to say, like, you can only create so many a day or so many on a phone number. It created this whole other industry where people would buy Gmail addresses.
Exactly, and then you get the the random email generators that you can use to try and get around those things, but the emails last for like 30 minutes. So that's when you see Facebook.
So one other thing that about people can't create accounts on old servers anymore. It says like server full. Could you touch a little bit on that? Why that is?
Well, I'm sure everybody has been in an SVS or been on a server where you've had a player get really annoyed and, they decide, well, I'm not going to talk from my main account. I'm going to go make a alt account and come in and blast people in world chat and behave badly. And it got to new heights on Continent 6. You probably saw all of the new measures that got put in place to report harassment and report, comments and players for various different types of infringements. And a lot of that stemmed from the fact that people were creating level 1 monarchs and building them up to like level 6, 7, 8 so they had access to world chat and coming in and doing these things. And some of them started, and I'm sure you've heard about this, Genghis, some of them started threatening to dox people and actually releasing people's personal information in the game in world chat through these little alt accounts and monarchs. And so Evony didn't have much of a choice. They had to find a way to crack it down. And so the response was, the harassment reporting and everything wasn't enough. So now you can't make level 1 monarchs on an old server. You can't, after 30 days, new servers close and you can't make new accounts.
Yeah, so most people thought this was tied to resource sellers or making alts to get resources.
There is a lot of it that's tied to RSS sellers, because this big network, one of their big things, is to find a way to convince players that all of these little accounts that are out there being used to create these, big RSS, funnels, basically, that they can, allow someone to hit for 50 billion RSS of each type. Those keeps end up gaining personalities so that they aren't immediately banned the minute that they get hit 250 times to be able to get that RSS, right? And so to develop that personality, they have to be in world chat and they have to be ticking people off so that way Evony doesn't look at them and go, oh, you're a bot. We can remove you. So they go in and they make it look like it's a player that's just mentally unstable, and everybody on the server suddenly decided to beat up on them.
Yeah, and then you told me, without naming the company that does stuff for Evony behind the scenes, that they basically told Evony, like, you have harassment issues and whatnot, and you have to. We aren't taking the heat for this, and you have to clean this up.
Yeah, so in that group I was telling you about, there's some security professionals that work with a entity that provides some security stuff for Evony. And so they were all like, hey guys, we know something big's coming down the pipeline to try and change a lot of the stuff that people are seeing, because, Evony, our company had to send several letters to Evony basically saying, hey, you're going to clean this up, or, we can't be in business with you anymore. And so a lot of changes are happening because of that. In fact, I don't know if you've noticed, Genghis, have you gone to any of the newer servers and looked at the way they now allow account creation?
I haven't, but I've noticed that new servers look completely different. It's almost like it's a different game.
It is. It is. So if you made a keep in the 1500, it looked a lot like the old game. You still had the little puzzle guy in the center, and you could go and hit the little map icon and go do your puzzles, and they were all relatively the same. But by the time they got to the 1600s, the puzzles started to change, and so all those advertisements that you saw for shooters for like a year, and everybody was like, that's not what the game looks like. In the 1600s, that's exactly what the beginning of the game looked like, and that's what the puzzles look like. And now in the 1700s, in order to create an account, you have to go through, and that fog that comes over.
Yeah, I've seen the fog. It sucks.
Yes. So you actually have to go through each of those puzzle levels to unlock the RSS tiles in front of the walls so that you can build your farms and your army camps and all of that. So you can't build any RSS tiles until you get through those. And in order to get through those, you have to develop purple generals. So you remember when they came out with this whole thing to ascend purple generals?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is why, because it's the only way to beat those levels.
Yeah.
So you can't even get to the point of unlocking things. And so there are players who have never played this game before who are sitting kind of permanently stuck at level 9 going, what do we do? And some of these bot builder softwares like Goodnight Bots likes to be able to build from the ground up, right? That's part of their thing is you can literally bot a keep from like level 1 to level 30, supposedly.
I remember that in old, like original Evony, you could do that.
Yeah,
it would build your city. It would do everything.
Exactly, and that's kind of the platform the Goodnight Bots is built on. Well, now you can't, because it can't play through those levels, because the algorithm changes the patterns of the buffs and everything every time it comes through. So what it's doing is it's slowing down the process for RSS sellers to be able to build those bot accounts. It's taking more time.
So do you think Evony cares about bots? Because they could easily shut that down.
I think that's what we're seeing is this is like how they think they're going to try and do it in the 1700s. It's an interesting concept. I'd love to see how it works out for them.
Like they started with the boss finder there, and they've introduced it to, I think, the whole game. Like my server has it, but it's very limited. And then they also have an auto join feature, I believe, but I haven't looked at it or seen it. But I've heard people say it's very limited, only 2 hours a day and a certain amount of bosses.
Yeah. So in the 1600s, they introduced the boss finders, and they were only to a limited number of accounts. They baited it with like 100 accounts per server, so not everybody on those servers had access to them. And then around 1650, they introduced the join feature, the auto join feature with the card that allowed you to do it for like 2 hours or something. I can't remember what the dollar value was on it, but it was kind of like, the boss monster card that you pay $10 and then, you go out and kill bosses and you get extra RSS. The only difference was you paid the money, you hit the button, and then it just auto-joined the rallies and it only sent a single troop. So it actually looked a lot like what you would expect with like ESB because there was no general attached to it either.
Yeah, so I like I said, I'm not overly familiar with it because I haven't joined it. I don't even think it's available on my server, but from what people told me and I was like, why would anybody do that? Because it was like $10 for the thing.
It's so expensive.
And then you look at ESB and it's like $5 a month. But people were like, but what about people who only have a phone and don't have a computer? So I guess that does make sense for them, but very high priced. So let's wrap this episode up because I want them to go to your channel. So can you tell them what they can expect to see in episode 1?
So episode 1 is basically an introduction to exactly what we're going to be covering. So it gives you kind of the background of Evony, where these things kind of started to come around, and an idea of what kind of things you look for when you're talking about RSS sellers and bot runners. That said, it also dispels some notions about some people that people think are major RSS sellers running massive numbers of bots. Because we do visit some of those alliances and show that the activity you would expect to see, those spider webs, well, it's simply not there. So if they're not RSS sellers, if they're not botting for this, how are they getting it? So that's what we get to in part 2.
All right. So tune in. Those are the options to watch it right there. So you have the YouTube channel, Enchanted Evony, and then you have Briar Rose Twitch. So check them out. The link to follow them is in the description to the video as well. So like, subscribe, leave a comment.